So I'm going to speak on my paper I wrote over the essays I read in the book titled A Map of It's Only One Story 20 Writers on Immigration, Family, and the Meaning of Home by Nicole Chung and others. So, ooh, yeah, I started off with my thesis statement, which is, sum it up. I said I was going to attempt to write my paper over the essays I chose. I wanted to try to focus on a different topic for each one of them. And you'll see towards the end that didn't really work out because two essays I chose had a interlocking topic of sorts. Not the same, but slightly. And I spoke on attachment, on how attachment lessons on each generation, and it's not a physical thing. It can be a mentality as much as something physical. Speaking on that, I'll start off with, it's not the first one I talk about in the book, I know on my paper, but the Arabs in America, Arabs past, Arabs American present. They speak on how their grandparents had come, their grandfather had come over and opened a bakery with his brothers, and then later on, they had children who decided they didn't want to wed within their community, and they want to reach out, they want to expand. So their children married and had more children, and by the time the author came into the picture as the grandchild of the third generation immigrant, by the time she came around, the Quran stuff that of their Arab past, religious past at least, was more pushed to the side and hidden away. And how her grandparents on her father's side, who had been the immigrants, they didn't really push her to be, Arab. They didn't view her as, I guess, an Arab, as I'll go into later on. But how her I didn't say this in the deal, but her grandparents on the other side, they were Jewish, and they called her Jewish. They said that she should identify as a Jewish person and persons, and go into that thing. But the part of it that kind of shocked me on it, I'm gonna be honest, was its towards the end. It was a single sentence, but it was that during her grandmother's later years before she passed, she spoke to her, and she found out that her grandmother didn't view her as an Arab like herself. She viewed her as one of the American girls that she'd see in the street. And it felt like there's just through that there's a rather large disconnect between them. And even though she speaks highly of them throughout the paper, it's kind of sad. I'm gonna be honest. Let's go through the other we'll go all the grandparents ones, all the grandparent related ones first, and then the next one is Mourning My Birthplace, and that one, I lost my grandmother in January, so this kind of stuff, even though she doesn't live far away, this kind of hit home to me, just the feeling of loss, and how now, even because of COVID, it feels as if I'm just as far away as they were. You don't get that chance to go in and say, hey, because of COVID, you can just you can only call and stuff, and I only got a phone call. That's all I got. They got to go see them and stuff, and that's really cool. But I only got a phone call. I don't know why I'm saying that. That's the sad deal. But I loved how she brought up. She didn't maybe mean to, but the advancements of technology and how they positively affected their relationship. Because early on, she's talking about how they were charged by the minute phone calls, but later on, after probably they had iPhones and iPads and that kind of stuff, they started going on FaceTime over video chat. So maybe Skype, maybe Zoom, maybe FaceTime, and it's just, that's awesome, the fact that there is all this interconnectivity now that during some of these other stories, as you might see, it didn't exist as much. Okay, so next I want to talk about. Let me find it. The partition of India. It was the return to partition essay about a family. It's about a boy who's always lived. It starts out with the boy. Maybe it's a guy. Sorry, I should have looked further and wrote the author's name. That was my mistake. My paper, but they speak about how they returned to India from Pakistan after the partition, which was the religious skirmishes between Islam and Hindus, Muslims and Hindus, where all the Muslims went to Pakistan, and when they fled, they left everything they had. Both sides did. When the Hindus fled Pakistan and the Muslims fled India, they left all their stuff, and it's them going back to the home that they fled in India back in the 1940s, and it's crazy, just the change, and even though they say it was only 30 minutes, I want to say, difference, but there's still this massive disconnect from the past and from present. They said, they speak about how you can see the Arabic text on the doors, and that's how they kind of knew, oh, this is our house, and they saw the name on it, which was the grandfather's name who built the house. So they realized, this, holy crap, this is where we're from, but they'd never seen it. They hadn't even information about it. I want to say, no, that's the other one. Sorry. But just that disconnect was crazy to me. And, they talk about during it, it's not really as related, but it kind of shows. I thought it was interesting, at least the propaganda aspects of Pakistan, and like how their entire life they've been told India is a certain way, and this was probably the times before when information wasn't readily available as well. They can just go on your iPhone on whatever they have and look. So they thought what they were told was true, and they were talking about how they just this certain it felt the same as what they left behind when they came across the border. It never felt like they left Pakistan, and they were kind of surprised by that, and how it looked the same from one side to the other, and how there really wasn't much difference. And I thought that was extremely interesting. Then let me get the next one. Oh yeah, okay, so the next one is going to be kind of on the story of carefree white girls and careful brown girls, and it tells the author, she's talking about how she came over from the Philippines as when she was adopted as a teenager, but due to American laws and just problems with our laws, she was never able to gain her documentation to say that she was adopted. And I found it, it shows the faults of our system and how we need to improve it to help out those who come over and do have problems, so that they don't wind up with the same problems. They can actually, in a way, they're kind of people who we can rely on to push others to go through the legal means. If they don't have any problems with it, they don't have to, we're not gonna have people trying to do the illegal means if the legal means are easy enough. But in my response to it, I kind of brought up Big Ed from 90 Day Fiance, because the woman was Filipino, and Big Ed from 90 Day Fiance, his whole deal is he met a Filipino woman online who really didn't like him that much, and due to that, she was kind of like a mail order bride of sorts, and she only saw him as a meal ticket out of there. And you kind of see, and that's one of the responses that the author speaks about, is how people think she's just there because she was paid money, or she is just seeing him as a meal ticket, her husband who she's with at the time. And I thought that was really interesting. And then on the opposite side, you have the last essay I chose was Undocumented Lovers in America, and that one that one surprised me so much. Like, I was twist after twist after twist. Like, I guess it kind of showed me that I didn't know that much about what I thought I knew about. At the beginning, the author has the large problem with her boyfriend where she tells him she's undocumented, and he's like, wow, and he starts freaking out about it. And that kind of surprised me. I don't know. I didn't expect her to say that he would react that way. I figured it'd be more of a accepting reaction than a, well, let's see what we need to do now. But then I don't know, I don't know why. I feel like I sound like I'm sad, but I'm not. But then the how she moves on to the next guy, who was the undocumented immigrant from Mexico, and how he reveals to her that he's still dating someone else back in Mexico. And I thought that's, and then he leaves her for the girl in Mexico, and then it's like, I don't know, it felt strange to me. Like, she like starts talking about how much she's like thinking about him and all this stuff, and how she keeps hoping she's gonna see him again. And to me, that's just like really weird. It feels like he probably manipulated her quite a bit, and saw her probably as more of a meal ticket than anything. It's a way to get legal, because she probably, I think it's said in the art. I don't have it on me right now, but I feel as if it said in the essay that he thinks she has documentation, so he can marry her and get the green card and become documented himself. And I thought that was pretty interesting. And then at the end, so the themes I picked up on was the loss of attachment over time through the Arab past, American present story, the lack of attachment, through the lack of attachment, the scaredness of attachment, and the petition story, return to petition, and the let me go up. I'm trying to bring fart. Sorry. And then mourning my birthplace, the sadness of loss, and how, one thing I didn't mention on that story is how the bureaucratic manner of immigration, how they speak on how, due to our bureaucracy of, immigrants, migration, sometimes it can take a while for certain stuff to go through, even if it's all, right. It can still take a long time, as is the issue with the mourning my birthplace story, is when they were a kid, they never have a chance to go back because it took so long to be documented so that they could travel abroad. And I thought that was like really interesting. But that story is like sadness and how we need to fix up our system. The two last ones, Carefree White Girls, Careful Brown Girls, and Undocumented Lovers in America, they both touched on the similar topic of love and how it has to do with migration. One I did include in my paper that I really wish I had, kind of, because I didn't feel like I don't like writing about it, but I did find it really interesting. Was the I can't remember the title of it, so sorry. Let me see if I have the book open. So sorry, you're just gonna look at me for a little bit while I find this. One I liked was Dead Guys Shirts and Motel Kids, because they kind of showed the more childish reasons that people can have to come to a far off country, as in that circumstance when they come to America just because, hey, let's party. The author speaks about how her parents had ended up splitting because her father decided he needed to see help because he realized that their partying circumstances weren't well, and her mother ended up moving far north, away from where they had originally gone to find better work. And I thought that was, it shows that the start it's fun in games, but over time it does get more difficult for them. And I just found that essay really interesting. And this is my last one. I feel like I should bring this up because I brought it up to Dr. Fink, something related to it in another article, another paper, but the one titled "What Miyazaki's Heroines Taught Me." I thought that one was so awesome. If you don't know Hayao, I don't know how to say his name, Hayao Miyazaki, he runs a studio called Studio Ghibli in Japan, and his animation is probably some of the most well-known Japanese animation out there. They're films that you might have seen on Cartoon Network when you were a kid or something like that. And the author, speaking of her, how she came when she was a child, she came from Japan when she was 7 years old to America, and how she used those films to kind of connect with her past, I guess you could say. And I just found that to be so cool. You know, the way I had talked about it, Dr. Fink, is she has a film called A Graveyard of Fireflies, and in that film, it's about what happened in Japan during World War II, and it goes really in depth to what the children experienced during that time, the challenges that they might have faced, and you kind of see how the author in this book, she kind of relates to the Spirited Away novel, anime, and she relates to Princess Mononoke, and she relates to, I had a brain fart, that's not it. I'm sorry. I can't find it. It's another one that's really good. It's about an old lady who is a girl who's made into an old lady who finds out I can't find it, I'm sorry. But it's really good. And I would suggest, reading that one essay, What Miyazaki's Heroines Taught Me. I'd wholly suggest reading that one because it's very well written. It's probably my favorite one. I just didn't feel like, I felt like I already had everything chosen by the time I found it, and I was like, crap. But I guess that's all I'm going to talk about. Thanks for listening. It's kind of long. Sorry. I apologize, but hi, bye.